fotos em asteroides. Bom, depois de tudo isso, ele ainda é cofundador da Space Adventures e da Zero Gravity Corporation. Vamos receber agora Peter Diamandis.
Good morning. Good morning. It is an honor and a pleasure to be here. We are living during the most extraordinary time ever. This is a time where an individual with a passion, with a desire, can tap into the world's resources, can tap into almost unlimited amount of capital, and can change the world. And it's that belief that a single person can get access to all the computational power, access to touch the lives of 1 billion people, that makes it, for me, the most exciting time ever to be alive, and a time when truly the entrepreneurs of Brazil can impact the planet. So let's jump in. I want to talk about 4 subjects today. The first is transforming scarcity into abundance. The second is the need we have to evolve or die, to transform industries that have been 100 years old and realize they're all going to change, not in 50 years or 40 years, in the next 10 years. I want to talk about some of the highlights of exponential technologies. What are the technologies that are changing the world right now? And then finally close on this idea of bold thinking for exponential organizations. I had the pleasure to write a book called Abundance, The Future is Better Than You Think. It was at the top of the New York Times list. I'm very proud of the book. And the book says we're heading towards a world where we can meet the needs of every man, woman, and child on this planet. And as I released the book, people would say to me, Peter, why are you so positive about the future? Don't you watch the news? And the answer, of course, is I'm positive about the future for 2 reasons. One, no, I do not watch the news. Especially in the United States, but... The second reason is I'm positive about the future because I look at the data. I look at what we as humans have been doing on this planet. So let's look at the data together very quickly. Over the last 100 years, we have tripled the global economy. We have doubled the human lifespan. We're about to double the human lifespan again. We have dropped the cost of food 20-fold. We have dropped the cost of energy 30-fold, 50-fold. The cost of transportation has dropped hundreds of fold. The cost of communications has dropped millions of fold. So let's look at some of the more data. This is a chart that shows us how many people are living in extreme poverty. We're heading towards a world where in the next 15 to 20 years, we're going to remove the world from extreme poverty. This is a chart looking at global literacy, going from 15% to nearly 90% of the world able to read and write. This is perhaps one of the most important charts. It's the drop in childhood mortality rate over the last 200 years. It used to be that 45% of children who were born would die. Today, it's down to less than 5%. It used to be dangerous to be a mother, right? Giving birth was a dangerous prospect. Today, it's not. Look at this. The number of children per family in the 1950s, 100 countries had 6 or more children per family. 2 things reduce the number of children per family, reduce the population pressures of the planet. You make a city better educated and healthier, the number of children per family plummets. My friends in Silicon Valley are worried about underpopulation of planet Earth, not overpopulation. This is from a book called The Better Angels of Our Nature from Steven Pinker that shows us we're living during the most peaceful time ever in human history. It's hard to believe that watching the crisis news network or the constantly negative news network or whatever you want to call CNN. This is the reduction in homicide in Europe, right? Dropping 100-fold over the last hundreds of years. We are truly living in a world that is more and more peaceful. I love this. In 2010, terrorists killed about 7,700 people globally, while obesity killed 3 million people. Right? The human violence is responsible for less than 1% of global death. In 2012, 620,000 people died from violence, compared to 800,000 who committed suicide and 1.5 million who died from diabetes. We're changing the course of our expectations. Even while the quality of life has gotten extraordinary, you can go and watch any movie you want, have any meal you want, have any kind of vacation you want, we are now working half the hours we used to work. Look at this. This blue line, or this red line is airline traffic, right? Flying on an Embraer airplane is clearly the safest means of transportation on the planet. That blue line is automotive deaths. We still have 1.3 million people die per year in car accidents. But as we go to autonomous cars, that number will go to zero as well. This is global deaths from natural catastrophes. Earthquakes and hurricanes and all kinds of floods. And look at the way it drops off. Right, in the 1960s and 1970s, it goes towards near zero. Why? Because we have better technology from space to watch what's going on, better predictive models, better data. So the question is, over the last 200 years, why has this trend gotten so much better? Why now? It's clearly not better politicians, right? It's the impact of exponential technologies. So my definition of a great technology is exponential technologies take those things that used to be scarce and make them abundant for everybody. So the simple example is this. If I had a large orange tree, and I was grabbing oranges from the lower branches, after a period of time, after I've grabbed all the oranges I can grab, oranges now become scarce. Until I build a piece of technology called a ladder that gives me higher reach, and all of a sudden oranges are abundant again. The same thing is happening in energy right now. You know, breakthroughs in fracking and in being able to go down 5,000 meters below the ocean surface and 5,000 meters sideways. Those technologies have opened up more and more access to energy for us. But we're about to gain access to an extraordinary amount of energy. 8,000 times more energy hits the surface of the Earth from the sun than we consume as a species in a year. And so what we're heading towards is a world in the next, not 50 years, not 40 years, not 30, inside of the next 20, if you ask me, probably in the next 10 to 15, where we're going to be getting nearly the supermajority, 70, 80% of our energy from the sun. Right? This is from the World Economic Forum. Coal is dead, and many natural hydrocarbons are going to follow. You think about perfect diamonds being scarce. There's a company I advise in Silicon Valley called the Diamond Foundry that has a machine about the size of a small refrigerator. In one end comes water, electricity, and methane. Out the other end comes perfect diamonds. 3 carats, 5 carats, 8 carats. How big would you like your diamond? Would you like it with colors, with flaws? So everything we used to think of as scarce is becoming abundant. Everything. We're heading towards a world where we are going from scarcity to abundance on every single area. So, as I talk about this and I teach this, and I'm in the boardrooms of the Fortune 500 companies and I'm with the executives, I talk about the idea that we are now digitizing the world. We're digitizing medicine, finance, energy, healthcare, education. And when you digitize something, it enters a period of slow, deceptive growth. In the early days of the technology, it's very slow. People don't notice it. And then almost out of no place, it becomes disruptive. It dematerializes, it demonetizes, and democratizes products and services and industries. So what does this mean? And by the way, I'm going to give you all a chance to download all of these slides at the end if you want them. So let's talk about dematerialization. Dematerialization is this. 20 years later, all of these things fit in your pocket. Right? I don't carry a GPS anymore on the dashboard of my car. It's now an app on my phone, as is high-definition cameras and video cameras and two-way video conferencing equipment and books and music and all of these things. On the cell phone of the poorest child in Tanzania, that person has millions of dollars worth of apps that you and I would have paid for 20 years ago, available for free. Right? So we are dematerializing, we're turning these products and services from things into ones and zeros. And the cost of duplicating them is near zero. The cost of transmitting them is near zero. And because of that, we are demonetizing. Right? Uber is demonetized the taxi fleets. Amazon, bookstores, Skype, long distance, Google, research, Craigslist in the United States has destroyed the newspapers, taken the money out of the classifieds and put it back into consumers' pockets. And then finally, the benefit for dematerializing and demonetizing is democratizing. That your marketplace, the marketplace for entrepreneurs here in Sao Paulo, is no longer just Brazil. The marketplace is the world. The marketplace is a great app, a great design, a great product, can be sold in 190 countries around the world. There are 1 billion customers in Africa. So let's talk about this idea of disruption, evolve or die. Because the world is changing, let's put it this way, the only constant is change, and the rate of change is increasing. Now here's the challenge. All of us, our brains, the 100 billion neurons in our brains, the 100 trillion synaptic connections, evolved on the savannas of Africa hundreds of thousands and millions of years ago. Our brain evolved for a time that was very local and very linear. Nothing changed very fast back then. But today the world is global and exponential. Something happens in Asia, you know about it seconds later. Your computers know about it microseconds later. Things are not changing century to century or decade to decade. They're changing year to year. Right? Amazon buys Whole Foods and the entire industry changes instantly. And so if I were to graph it, it looks like this. This red line is all of us. It's our kids, it's our politicians, it's our customers, it's our friends. We are all linear thinkers. We have not had a hardware or software upgrade in 2 million years. It's been a while. That yellow line is technology. It's computers, sensors, networks, AI, robotics, 3D printing, synthetic biology. All of these technologies are doubling in power every 12 to 24 months, and it's not slowing down. And so the difference between these linear thinking humans and this exponential technology is either disruptive stress, if you're the CEO of a company that's not willing to change or not able to change, or it's disruptive opportunity if you're an entrepreneur in the audience here going, yes, I'm going to destroy that company, I'm going to reinvent that product and that service, I'm going to offer it to the entire planet. So let me give you an example. Back in 1996, Kodak was at the top of its game, right? It had a brand predominant in Sao Paulo, in New York, in Tokyo. It was just a major brand. 140,000 employees, $28 billion market cap, and they thought of themselves as unbeatable. What most people don't know is that 20 years earlier, in 1976, Kodak had invented the digital camera. In their labs, they had the patents, they had the first mover advantage, but when the creator, Steven Sasson, brought the digital camera into the boardroom of Kodak and said, here it is, the future of Kodak. It takes 0.01 megapixel images. You can imagine the board laughed and said, "You're kidding me, that's a toy for kids. We make beautiful, high-resolution images. Besides, we're in the paper and chemicals business." They forgot what business they were truly in. They were not in the paper and chemicals business. They were in the business of helping to preserve people's memories. So, ultimately, the digital camera that they had invented put them into bankruptcy. And in the same year that Kodak filed for bankruptcy, another company called Instagram gets acquired by Facebook for $1 billion. But they had 13 employees. And so we're heading into an era where linear thinking companies are going to be disrupted by exponential technologies. And exponential entrepreneurs are going to change the world. Yeah, right on. So this is what it looks like. This curve is what it looks like when a linear technology falls off a cliff and an exponential technology grows. And today it's not 380 billion, that curve ends in 2011. Today it's 1.2 trillion digital photographies that we're all clicking away on. Here's another example. You guys know Netflix? In the United States, the video company that they disrupted was called Blockbusters. I don't know if Blockbusters was around here. It was? Okay. In 2008, there was an article by the CEO of Blockbuster saying very proudly, "Netflix is not even on our radar screen." Well, clearly it wasn't, because they disrupted them. So here you see Netflix going into the ground, Blockbuster going into the ground and Netflix beginning to grow. But this is only part of the story, because what happens next is Netflix goes from 2010 at $2 billion today to $70 billion. This is the benefit you get riding on top of the exponential growth, right? The tsunami of change. And instead of being crushed by the tsunami, you want to be surfing on top of it. Richard Foster at Yale University did a study looking at companies on the Standard & Poor's Index, the S&P 500, and he said if you started a company back in the 1920s where the rate of change was slow, you were there for 67 years, doing the same thing over and over and over again. Today, you join the S&P 500, you're on there for 15 years because the rate of change is so fast, right? Your MySpace displaced by Facebook, by Snapchat, or whatever's next. And we're also going from I've got an idea to I run a $1 billion company faster than ever before. Right? My friend Chad Hurley, who starts YouTube on his credit cards and sells it to Google for $1.6 billion 18 months later. Instagram, which was acquired for $1 billion by Facebook, and people laughed at that ridiculous price to pay for a photo sharing app, is now worth $30 billion on Facebook's balance sheet. And there's no way to explain Uber or Lyft to the CEOs of the taxi companies and the rental car companies and saying 5 guys are never going to buy a car, they're going to be worth $65 billion in 5 years' time and displace half of your business. So I talk about exponential technologies. What does exponential even feel like? What does it mean? So let's take a look. We are all linear thinkers. We really do great. I can say in 5 steps I'm going to be right there. In 30 steps I'm in the last row. So in 30 linear steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In 30 steps I'm 30 meters away. And we all can do that. We are great linear thinkers. In fact, we make things from the past all look linear in the future. But they're not linear. They're exponential for many of the technologies we're speaking about. And an exponential is simple doubling. 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, and so forth, doubling on top of computational power. And 30 doublings later, I'm not in the back of the room, 30 doublings later, I've traveled 1 billion meters. Put differently, I have traveled 26 times around the planet. And that difference between I'm in the back of the room and I've orbited the Earth 26 times is the difference that will destroy a Blockbuster and create a $70 billion Netflix. So I teach this, and we have created a university in Mountain View in Silicon Valley called Singularity University. I think we have some alumni here in the audience. Any alumni in the audience from SU? A few? Okay, well, I know a number of people who said they want to attend. We have a graduate program, our GSP, and during this program we ask our students, as you should be asking the entrepreneurs here at Sao Paulo, we say, we want you to find one of the world's biggest problems and build a product or a service that can touch the lives of 1 billion people in 10 years. Because that's the world we're living in. Right? We're living in a world where the world's biggest problems are the world's biggest business opportunities. We want to become a billionaire, help 1 billion people. And believe me, one of the things that Sao Paulo has is you've got this bridge between extraordinary technology and a world of need. And the problems you solve here are going to be problems you can solve everywhere. We run executive programs, we run programs for Fortune 500 executive teams. And all of the things I've been speaking about are riding on top of what's called Moore's Law. You may have heard of Moore's Law. This guy is Gordon Moore. And Gordon Moore is one of the founders of Intel. And along with 2 other guys, in 1958, they set out to create a company that would build integrated circuits. This was just after, the transistor revolution. And so, by 1965, they had been putting transistors onto pieces of silicon. And Gordon Moore wrote this very famous paper. And in this paper he goes, over the last 7 years we've noticed something. That the number of transistors on a piece of silicon, on an integrated circuit, has been doubling every 12 to 18 months. And it's likely to continue. And that law, that Moore's Law, has continued for 50 years. And is the underpinning for all of these exponential technologies we're going to be speaking about. So, let me show you what that looks like. If you can see this photograph, you can see a horizontal and a vertical transistor. This is in 1958. This is the first integrated circuit of 2 transistors. Fast forward to 1971. This is Intel's first commercial product, the Intel 4004. 2,300 transistors, about $1 per. Let's fast forward now 45 years to 2016. This is the Intel Core i7 processor. 14 billion transistors, less than 1/1,000,000 of a penny each. This is a 330 billion-fold price performance increase. When you feel the world is getting faster, this is why. This is what enables the miracles we have today. This massive increase, 330 billion-fold. But because that's really hard to imagine, let me show you another way to look at this. In 1956, this was a 5-megabyte hard drive for $120,000. And if you happen to have a cargo airplane, you could move it from office to office. Right? We noticed when this happened, when in 2005, it's now 128 megabytes for $99. But did we notice when this happened, when in 2014, now it's 128 gigabytes, 1,000-fold increase, right on schedule on Moore's Law. But here's the point, it's not slowing down. I'm an investor and an advisor to a nanotechnology company looking at putting 1 billion times more memory, right? Google's data centers on a sugar cube. This is a curve from Ray Kurzweil's book called The Singularity. Near between 1900 and 2010, we see this progression of computational power. This is on a log scale. You can't see World War I or World War II. We're using faster computers to build faster computers to build faster computers, and it continues without slowing down. And if it does, this is what you see. 6 years from now, in the year 2023, $1,000 now buys you the computational power of the human brain, 10 to the 16 cycles per second. And 25 years later, now $1,000 buys you the computational power of the entire human race. Now, your work is much easier. And faster, cheaper computers, ubiquitous, zero cost, always on computers are driving all of these other technologies. These computers are the growth medium. They're the foundation upon which all this technology, sensors, networks, synthetic biology, AR, VR, AI, robotics, all these things are getting faster and more powerful as our computers are becoming more ubiquitous and more powerful. And you can be an expert in any one of these, and many of you are. But it's the combination of AI and sensors and robotics, or augmented reality and synthetic biology and VR, all of these things combining in unusual ways that are creating new business models and are disrupting industries. So let's talk about some of the highlights of the exponential technologies out there. Let's talk first about the most powerful of them all, which is AI. So you may think of artificial intelligence as HAL from 2001. You may think of it as Siri or Google Now or Alexa on your Echo. I like to think of AI as Jarvis from Iron Man. And if you've seen the movie, and I hope all of you have, we are all going to have Jarvis in the next 10 years. We are all going to have some version of an AI that we are always wearing, is always with us, is always listening, and you are going to give permission to that AI to listen to all your conversations, listen to your phone calls, read what you're typing in your emails, watch what you're eating, take, measurements from your blood chemistry, because that AI doing those things is going to make your life so much richer, so much more valuable. It's going to monitor your health not every week, not every day, every minute. And if anything is wrong, it'll drive you in your autonomous car to the hospital, right? That AI is going to give you information just in time, even before you knew you needed that information. We're seeing an explosion in the amount of AI being invested. I just started my first venture fund, Bold Capital Partners, last year. We're about to start our second fund. We raised $120 million, and we're investing very heavily in AI. And this fund is in partnership with Singularity University. We're seeing more AI opportunities than any place else. This happened last year. This is the game of Go, millions of times more complex than the game of chess. And Lee Sedol from South Korea was the global champion. And Google went up against this world champion with their neural network AI called DeepMind and won 4-1. They decimated it. And it was not predicted that Google would win so rapidly. Let me share with you a short video of another thing that AI can do. I'm going to take you back to 1969 to when Stanley Kubrick and Arthur C. Clarke showed us the HAL 9000 computer. Let me play a short video clip, and then we'll talk about it afterwards. So let's watch this clip.
9,000 computers have been disconnected.
9,000 computers ever found?
That's not what I mean. Well, I'm not so sure what do you think about it.
So you remember that clip where HAL is able to read their lips to find out they're talking about disconnecting him, and he's not very happy about that. Well, let me tell you that that technology for an AI to read your lips is now here. Let's take a look. It says, how easy do you think lip reading is? Let's give it a try. Too fast, right? Let's try it again slower. Challenging. Take a look at LipNet's prediction.
Place blue in M1 scene.
Play red in X-ray zone.
Set green with U0 again.
So we now have the ability of AIs to read lips, even if you can't understand, and I couldn't understand what they were saying. But an AI can, wherever there are cameras, wherever there is video, you think you're having a private conversation? Guess again. This came out of India. This is a company called Moog AI. And Moog AI last year made predictions in the United States elections, and they predicted way in advance both the Democratic and Republican wins for Clinton and Trump, and then predicted 3 weeks in advance Trump's election. And the way they did this was not pollsters talking to a few people. They actually followed 20 million data points on Google and Twitter and Facebook and YouTube. And so the next elections are going to be even much more colorful than the previous elections. So if we can lower the audio on this, let me talk over it. This is a robot in Google's labs. And what these robots are doing is they are trying, can we lower the audio please, AJ? They're using a grasper trying to go and pick up objects here. And they are learning by trial and error, just like a child does. When it goes down and it misses, it says, that doesn't work, let me try this, let me try this. And so they are learning how to grasp. All of those 30 robots are connected to each other. And one of the fascinating things is when one robot learns, they all learn. Right? So it's not like every robot has to learn on its own how to pick up. Every single time one robot learns something, all of them learn it. It can share the knowledge with everybody. This is the advantage that AI and robotics are going to have. Let's talk about sensors and networks. So this is the guy at Kodak who invented the first digital camera, Steven Sasson. $10,000, 4 pounds, 2 kilograms, 0.01 megapixels. Of course, today it's 10 megapixels. It's 1 billion times better. But it doesn't stop here, right? We're going to have high-definition cameras woven into our clothing and micro drones in the air. Here's some more sensors. This is a military secret from 1960, worth tens of millions of dollars, tens of pounds. This is the guided system for a warhead. This is the guided system to get us to the moon. And people would have lost their lives over this. Today, it's $1 on your iPhone, and you think nothing about it when you throw this in the drawer, right? You're throwing away this massive military secret that's billions of times better. And of course, in the future, it's going to be molecular. It's going to be free. It's going to be built out of just nano components. This is the first GPS. $120,000, 53 pounds. You can imagine this thing on the dashboard of your car. And today it's a couple of bucks in your Apple Watch. Here's the point. None of this stuff is slowing down. It's getting cheaper and smaller and faster and better constantly. This is a Google contact lens that is measuring the glucose in your tears, which is related to the glucose in your bloodstream. We don't have it now, right? But all of us inside of the next 5 years to 10 years are going to be wearing a whole number of biometrics on our hands, inside our bodies, that are measuring your health constantly. And we're going to go from what we have right now, which is a very broken healthcare system around the world, which only helps you after you're sick. It's sick care. To a system of preventative, personalized, predictive medicine. It's going to drop our healthcare costs tenfold, if not greater. In terms of sensors, an autonomous car with a LiDAR on the roof is generating 750 megabytes of data per second. It's seeing everything within 100 meters. We're now entering a world where there are a half-dozen private constellations of satellites in orbit looking at the entire planet in meter resolution. You can count the number of cars in your competition's parking lot and predict what their quarterly returns are going to be before they know. You can watch raw materials entering a factory in China or India and seeing final products coming out. Right? It used to be the CIA or the KGB that had that capability. Today it's everybody. You just have to know where it is and where to get it. We're heading towards a world where we're going to have tens of thousands of drones flying over every city all the time, imaging the world in centimeter resolution, and then augmented reality glasses visualizing the world in millimeter resolution. Let's talk about networks. In 2010, there were 1.8 billion people connected on planet Earth. Today, it's 3 billion people. By 2022 to 25, in the next 7 to 8 years, we're going 3 billion people to 8 billion connected people. We're about to add 5 billion new global customers in the next 7 years. If you don't think this is the largest market explosion ever in human history, you're wrong. These 5 billion new people coming online, right? All the biggest buildings in Sao Paulo are banks, right? I guess they make the most money. But at the end of the day, the next 5 billion people are not going to be going to banks. They're not going to be going to ATMs. Everything is going to be digital and dematerialized. They're not going to buy insurance from insurance brokers. Everything is going to be digital and dematerialized, right? In addition, how is this going to happen? Well, Facebook is committed to connecting the second half of the world, as is Google. Richard Branson, Greg Weiler, and Paul Jacobs with OneWeb. And then a couple of months ago, SpaceX announced the 4,000 satellite constellation. We're about to connect the entire world, not like you and I did, right, at 9,600 baud rate. We're about to connect the entire world at megabit to gigabit speeds. Every single person. And you say, well, people don't all have tablets or cell phones. They will. They will. Why? Because if a person doesn't have a tablet, I can't sell them anything. And the price of tablets are dropping so rapidly that I'm going to give you one if you let me collect your data. I'm going to give you one if you let me sell you things when you need it. And then the 5G network, right? My friends at Qualcomm, I'm sure I'm in the telecom industry down here, we're about to wire the world on the surface with 5G, 10 to 100 gigabit speeds. Incredible. So what do 5 billion new consumers want? What do they need? What are they going to consume? What are they going to invent? What are they going to desire? This represents tens of trillions of real entering the global economy that people are not talking about. So about robots and autonomous cars. The traffic here in Sao Paulo is beautiful. We'll talk about this. So this, anybody know what this is a photograph of? Anybody? It's a Tesla plant, right? All of these robots are building the next generation of Model S, Model X, Model Es. You can see the one person overseeing the robots there. Let's take a look at this robot coming out of Boston Dynamics. It used to be owned by Google, now it's owned by SoftBank. And this is sort of the future of humanoid robots. Let's take a quick look. So make no mistake, these robots in combination with AI are going to take jobs. They're going to take jobs at the lowest skill levels. And our responsibility as innovators, as entrepreneurs, is to upskill our labor. Just like the majority of the world used to be farmers, and now that's down at 2, 4, or 5%. Our job is to partner with robots and AI and to transform this. And of course, some people are not going to be happy about the robots, and they'll do things like this. But that's not going to slow them down. I just want to see that robot turn around and kill that guy. So this also is a robot. This is one of Google's first autonomous cars. You can see Larry Page, Sergey Brin, and Eric Schmidt. And let's talk about how fast autonomous cars are going to transform the traffic in Sao Paulo. Shall we do that? Yeah. Thank you. This is a photograph of Manhattan in 1904. And what you see is all horse and buggies except for 2 vehicles. When you look very carefully, these are cars. And back in 1904, 10% of the vehicles on the road were cars. So the question is, how fast did it go from horse and buggy to all automobiles? Well, if you fast forward to 1917, it's all cars. The horse and buggy is gone. The car was such an advantage over the horse and buggy in terms of speed, in terms of safety, in terms of not having to feed or handle a sick horse. And so when did this transformation occur? Well, the Model T Ford came online in 1908. And by 1912, 4 years later, it had displaced half of the horse and buggies on the road in just 4 years. And so a good friend of mine, Jeff Holden, is the head of products, the chief product officer at Uber, and he's in charge of Uber's autonomous cars, AI, and flying cars. And his expectation is that Uber's fully autonomous cars will be on the road in the next 2 years, and that the cost of an autonomous Uber will be 10 times cheaper than owning a car. 10 times cheaper. When something is 10 times better, 10 times cheaper, you switch. Which means all of us who own cars are going to park our car, get rid of our car, sell our car, and instead be chauffeured around in autonomous Ubers. I have a Model S and a Model X. Here's all of them built today are enabled with level 5 autonomy. They have 8 cameras and 12 ultrasonic sensors on them, powering a supercomputer, which makes it able to navigate all roads, all conditions, much better than a human. We humans have so many deficits, so many time delays. We're so unable to know what's truly going on. This is Google's division called Waymo that's partnered with Chrysler and Lyft. And the prediction is that by 2025, car ownership will be dead. Which means you need far fewer cars on the road. It'll change the dynamics of traffic. And your time in a car becomes productive car where you can sleep, watch a video, play video games, whatever the course, whatever you want to do. So traveling an hour is a pleasure. It's quiet. It's relaxing. You get some work done. But besides autonomous cars, we're about to see the launch of flying cars too. Larry Page has funded 2 companies. This is a company out of China called Ehang. A friend of mine, Martin Rothblatt, has ordered 1,000 of these. And Dubai and Abu Dhabi has ordered an equal number. And the prediction is I'll come back here and we'll start to see flying cars, not just helicopters, going from rooftop to rooftop. Let's take a look at a short video from Ehang. This is from Dubai. One of the largest aircraft manufacturers in the world, Airbus, has committed by the end of this year to have self-driven airborne taxis. This is not a joke. There are billionaires and multi-billion-dollar companies going after this marketplace, which will transform, again, traffic and transportation. And then Uber has announced a multi-$100 million R&D effort called Uber Elevate. Right? You'll Uber from building top to building top and then get in your Uber autonomous car and go to the final location you want. Okay, final technology areas, 3D printing, genomics, VR, and AR. Let's go through this.
This is the latest. It actually happened in Thailand. This is a full-size house being 3D printed in 10 hours. Wow. And the speed and performance and intricate design that can be achieved now just boggles the mind. And this is at least, Peter, a 10x improvement over what we saw just a year ago.
So we're seeing 3D printing starting to enter very traditional markets, right? We can 3D print today with 500 different materials in full color at higher and higher resolution. It's not there yet, but it will be in your home. Let's look at the genomics revolution going on right now. This is the cost of reading a human genome. $100 million back in 2001. Today it's $1,000, and very soon it's going to be $100. You can write a genome, you can edit a genome with CRISPR-Cas9. This is the announcement from Illumina just a few months ago that we're going to have a $100 genome in 2 hours' time. Everybody's going to have their genome sequenced, and that genome will predict what's going to happen to you. VR and AR. So we're living in a world of 8 billion people, and Sao Paulo's entrepreneurs are going to be able to work with and service the entire globe. It's not just about the market here. It's about the market for the entire planet. Right? This is what we're seeing. 17 years ago, this was Lara Croft, a video game character on your computer. This is her today, right? Photorealism. We're seeing $10 billion being invested in VR, virtual reality, augmented reality, by Apple, Samsung, Facebook, Google, Microsoft. All the major giants are rushing towards this because it's going to transform the marketplace. It's going to transform how we shop, how we work together, how we create, how we collaborate. It's going to shrink the global distances to zero. So what is VR? VR is basically the notion that you have a pair of glasses and everything you're seeing is being generated by a computer, 100%. And your eyes, when you look out there, you're able to see at a resolution of about 16K. Today, the best screens are 4K. But with something called foveal rendering, we're very soon going to have to put on a pair of VR goggles and take them off and not being able to tell the difference between reality and virtual reality. And then it's going to put you in all kinds of unusual places. Augmented reality is when all of us in the next 5 years are going to be, I'm going to come back, we're all going to be wearing VR, AR glasses, augmented reality, where you see me, but at the same time you're seeing me through your glasses, superimposed, you're seeing all the data stream. Anything you want to know about me is right here, right next to me. And Tim Cook at Apple has a secret project, not so secret, but has predicted that augmented reality is going to be much larger than virtual reality because of its use in business. Right? And so this is Jarvis. This is augmented reality. We're all going to be Iron Man very soon. All right, let me wrap with this last concept of bold moonshots. And if I could get the lights up, that would be great. So we're living in a world today where most of the world is trying to get 10% better. Can I get the house lights up a little bit, please? Most of the world is trying to get 10% better, 10% higher profits, 10% more lights, thank you, 10% more revenue. You know, you can get 10% by working on Friday nights and Saturday nights. But a moonshot, as defined by my friends at Google, by Astro Teller, by Sebastian Thrun, by Larry Page, is living in a world where you're not trying to get 10% more, where you're shooting for 10 times bigger. And that's the world we're living in today, where you can go 10 times bigger versus 10% bigger. But it requires something. It requires taking huge risk. It requires letting go of the past. It requires reinventing the future. Right? So the great entrepreneurs that people talk about, like Jeff Bezos, who reinvents retail, or Elon Musk, who reinvents the launch industry or the solar industry, started with zero, right? They didn't go out and buy an old company and try and reform it. They started with a clean sheet of paper and said, what is now possible? Or better yet, what is a crazy idea we can make possible? Right? So for me, my moonshots, one of my companies is a company called Human Longevity, HLI. We are the world's largest genome sequencing facility. Our goal is to add 30 to 40 healthy years on everybody's life. Our goal is making 100 years old and you 60. One of my companies, Planetary Resources, it's focused on going out to mine asteroids. A crazy idea. But guess what? Our largest investor is the government of Luxembourg. And the US government 2 years ago passed the laws to own asteroid material if you can mine it off an asteroid. We are building spacecraft right now. Our first asteroid mission is 2020. And these asteroids are worth trillions of dollars in fuels and metals. We'll use those in space. And then the work I do with the XPRIZE Foundation is focused on what are the world's biggest problems that should be solved and aren't. And let's solve them. You see, we're living in a time where
Estou aqui para falar um pouco sobre alguns assuntos como gestão da inovação, inovar talentos, a quarta revolução.